Boom, 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 boom. Now tell me what you gonna do, but it ain't nowhere to run. When judgment comes for you, when judgment comes for you, tell me what you gonna do, when it ain't nowhere to hide. When judgment comes for you, 'cause it's gonna come for you.
Nigga, this for water, easy, see something Charlie. Little boo God's got him, and I'm gonna miss everybody out of row and flow like eggs. Look to the wild flag and pray for dust, and they play too deep for being sad. Little legs I got too deep. Tell me your feature deceased, would it please? Marry me by my grand, when you can go follow
God bless you, working on a plan to heaven.
Backbone Wrestling Network. Welcome back to the CrosUp, your weekly look back at the week that was in professional wrestling. This week I'm going to be running through the results happening from Rampage on November 22nd to SmackDown on November 29th, including Full Gear from AEW and Turning Point from TNA. Survivor Series will be discussed on next week's episode. Just didn't want to fit 3 pay-per-view / special event, whatever you want to call them, in the same episode. So I'm going to push Survivor Series to next week. So Full Gear, Turning Point this week, and then Survivor Series next week. So we'll open with Rampage, where Mariah May and Mina Shirakawa defeat Harley Cameron and Nyla Rose to start the show. And they hit kind of like the old Steiner Bulldog that the Steiners used to hit. They hit that on Harley and get the pin. We then get a weigh-in for QT Marshall's match versus Big Boom AJ. Marshall says he has been waiting for this match for 20 years. AJ says he has too, but he wants it even more now since QT insulted the double chunk chocolate cookie. And Marshall weighs himself, and it's normal, of course. And then AJ hops on the scale, and it says he weighs over 500 pounds. So Big Justice gets in QT's face, says the scale is rigged, and QT acts like he's going to go after Big Justice. So AJ comes in and nails a punch. He makes sure Big Justice is okay, and then QT hits the diamond cutter out of nowhere to kind of lay him out to end the segment. So led to a huge match at Full Gear between the two, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But Juice Robinson defeated the Butcher after that via pinfall with the Juice is Loose. Then get a hype package for the tag title match 4-way at Full Gear. Thunder Rosa is in the back getting interviewed by Lexi. She's happy that some luchadors and luchadoras are coming and issues a challenge to any luchador out there that wants to face her. Harley Graham then comes in, obviously the female counterpart to Hologram, which obviously it's Harley Cameron. But Thunder Rosa thinks that Harley Graham is familiar, and Harley Graham responds with "does not compute" in kind of a robot voice. So Harley Graham is going to face Thunder Rosa coming up next week. So we'll see how that goes for those two. We then get a hype package for the International Championship match between Takeshita and Ricochet. We then get the conglomeration of Mark Briscoe, Rocky Romero, and Ishii defeating the Dark Order, and they win. The conglomeration wins when Ishii hits the Brainbuster on Alex Reynolds. And then we end at Rampage with like a 10-minute video highlighting pretty much everything that's happening at Full Gear, set to November Rain by Guns N' Roses. The best match of Rampage was the conglomeration versus the Dark Order. Just really thought that, like as always, whenever they do a 6-man or whenever they do kind of these chaotic multi-man matches, I think they pulled those off a little better than maybe anybody else in the world there. So, but yeah, really good 6-man to end the show before they did their big video package. But we'll go from there to Full Gear. We open with Private Party defeating the Acclaimed, the Kings of the Black Throne, and the Outrunners when they hit the Gin and Juice on Max Caster. I said I was going to cover the Costco guys versus QT Marshall, but Big Boom AJ on the pre-show did get the victory over QT. So there is that. I had to mention it, or Ryan Gray was going to kill me, I'm sure. But yeah, he gets the big win over QT. But the next match on the main card was MJF defeating Roderick Strong via submission with the Salt of the Earth. After the match, MJF continues to destroy Roddy until Adam Cole, the Undisputed Kingdom, and Kyle O'Reilly run him off. We then get some more drama between Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly. We then get Mercedes Moné finally having a good match and defeating Chris Statlander via pinfall with a roll-up after kind of a botched little slingshot move she had done to the middle rope. So honestly, really good match up into the finish, and then the finish is just so horribly botched and terrible that it kind of tanked the match for me a little bit. But still a really, really good match. The best match by a mile that Mercedes has had since she came in. But you can give some credit to her, but Statlander's one of the best. So I'm gonna give a good bit of credit to her, but Mercedes did bring her in for sure. But the finish was very, very bad, and it could have been executed a little better. But the match before it was pretty solid. We then get Jay White defeating Adam Page once again via pinfall with the Blade Runner. Hangman attacks him afterwards, and Christopher Daniels comes out and tries to hold him back. But Daniels actually gets a right hand and gets decked for his troubles. We then get Kyle Fletcher getting the upset win over Will Ospreay via pinfall with the Brainbuster on the top turnbuckle. We then get the Mariah May Champagne Championship celebration with Mina Shirakawa. She brings her out. Mariah actually has a black eye from her hardcore match with Anna Jay that she had on Collision previously, or the previous week, I mean. May then talks about how she has deserved this, but because she has dominated the women's division and no woman alive could touch her. Shirakawa doesn't seem convinced, but they do a toast anyways and then do a little dance. Mariah then grabs a champagne bottle, goes to swing it at Mina, but Mina kind of sees it coming. And then they kind of, just kind of stand there and have a little bit of a face off, and then Mina spears her off the stage through a table. I hate to steal a line from Scott Shiflett, but the acting in this was pretty poor. He likes to say he's seen better acting in porn. So yeah, this was pretty rough. This did not need to be on pay-per-view. Pretty poorly executed there at the end with the bottle and then the spear through the table. I'm pretty sure Mina lost a tooth somewhere along the way, or her mouth got busted at some point. Made for a pretty awesome visual when she kissed her on the head with the bloody mouth, but the execution getting there was pretty poor, I'll say for sure. We then get Daniel Garcia defeating Jack Perry via submission with the Dragon Slayer to become the new TNT champion. We then get Konosuke Takeshita retaining his international championship when he hit the Raging Fire on Ricochet from the top rope. Bobby Lashley then defeats Swerve Strickland via submission with when Swerve passes out in the Hurt Lock, and then more of a beatdown on Swerve and Nana after the match. And then we get the main event where Jon Moxley defeated Orange Cassidy via pinfall to retain his AEW World Championship after Wheeler Yuta hit the running knee, and then Moxley follows that with the Death Rider. And then post-match, they beat down Orange until Hangman comes out for some reason. He ends up staring down Mox. Christian then comes out with his title contract, lays out Mox with it. He promises Page to give him the first title shot if he can keep the rest of the Death Riders away. Jay White then comes out and kind of screws this up, cuts off Christian, hitting him with the Blade Runner, and then the Death Riders jump Jay White and then bail. They end up running to the truck in the parking lot, but Darby Allin flies in his own car and crushes their truck with his car, taking just a sick, ridiculous driving spot. He did not use this stuntman whatsoever. He did it himself. And then they all freak out, steal someone else's keys, and steal their car and speed off. And then Darby gets out of the car and screams at them to bring it on. So Darby is not done with the Death Riders, so we'll see what they have in store for each other going forward. But Ospreay and Fletcher was the best match of the night. Like I said, Mercedes and Statlander was really good as well. But yeah, just another solid card. That the Champagne Celebration could have easily been on Dynamite, Rampage, Collision, whatever you want, wherever you want to put it. And there were a couple of matches that I felt like disappointed a little bit. Swerve Lashley was good, but not as good as I thought it could be. Same thing with Takeshita and Ricochet. I thought it was solid, but I thought it could have been more at the same time. And just all the stuff at the end. Just have the match. If you want to beat down Orange afterwards and kind of set up whoever the next challenger is, but it just took way too much time, and it was like another 10 minutes on the pay-per-view after all that stuff happened. So just a little too much gaga, which they're usually pretty good at not adding in. But yeah, when you get to the end of one of these long ass AEW shows, you don't need a little drama segment there at the end. So um, definitely not one of their best cards, but still a solid show. I don't think they're ever going to put on a bad show per se, but this was definitely one of their weaker efforts. I'll say for sure. But then we'll move to Raw from there. Gunther is out to start the show. They look back at Damian Priest taking him out backstage last week. Gunther is then asked about Priest's claims that Gunther's confidence is slipping lately. Before Gunther can actually reply, Priest comes out and interrupts. Says it's time for Gunther to brag how he can do anything. Priest says that he is Gunther's problem, and now the problem is now Priest's problem is taking the title. He asks what happened to the ring general, or what happens when the ring general loses to a street bum or street thug or street guy. Gunther then hits him with the microphone, and the fight is on. And they go outside where Priest takes over. He hits the Razor's Edge through the announcer's table, and then Gunther is taken out again with some help from the agents and kind of backstage security guys. We then get told officially that Jade is out of War Games. Bianca and Naomi aren't sure who can replace her. Io Sky suggests Kyrie, but Naomi suggests Bailey. And though Bianca isn't sure based on her and Bailey's history, she kind of agrees that Bailey should be the replacement. Rhea then comes in and says she doesn't care as long as they stay away from Liv and let her have hers. Bianca then it says she is not impressed with the leadership on Team Ripley. So they have a little bit of a stare off. So it may be leading to some future action between those two. Definitely a good little segment where they pretty much decide that Bailey's going to be the fifth member. We then get American Made from the LWO when Chad Gable turns Ray's mask around and allows Julius Creed to get the roll-up victory. We then get CM Punk joining the OG Bloodlines War Games team, the kind of highlights from SmackDown and all that stuff that happened. We then get R-Truth. He comes into the Judgment Day clubhouse. He says they're not his family anymore. Finn then throws him out, but R-Truth says Thanksgiving is off between all of them. And then once he leaves, Balor rants about the team's recent issues, but that they can turn it around. And they don't have any leaders, but if they listen to him, it will all be okay. We then get Ludwig Kaiser defeating Braun Breaker via DQ when Sheamus comes out and attacks Ludwig. All three men have to be held apart, and they, throughout the night, announce a triple threat between the three of them for the Intercontinental title at Survivor Series. We then get another CM Punk recap. We then follow that with a segment where the Usos and Sammy talk about the fact that they think they can trust Punk, but Punk will need to have a sit-down with Roman on SmackDown. We then get the Judgment Day of JD McDonough and Finn Balor defeating the War Raiders to retain their tag titles when Finn is able to steal a roll-up after a distraction from Dom Mysterio. We then get a New Day interview about getting back on track. And then the Alpha Academy pretty much squashed the New Day when Tozawa hits a top rope senton splash on Woods. They continue arguing afterwards. Kofi talks about how he's done everything for Woods. That's why Woods didn't get to call the shots back in the days because he's too reckless. Woods takes credit for Kofi becoming world champion, but Kofi says the reason he's never won a singles gold or a world title is because he isn't good enough. They seem to be about to fight, but then they agree to see each other at the reunion next week. So they're going to have a big 10th year anniversary reunion. Obviously, I'm sure Big E will be involved, but they will have a reunion next week, and we'll see how fiery and upset they get at each other at that. But looking forward to seeing what that one will entail. We then get the Miz. He sends the Final Testament off to find the White Six. They all leave, and then Nikki Cross pops up to scare Scarlett, who was left alone in their locker room. And then after the break comes back, the Final Testament and the Miz come back in the room, and Scarlett is freaking out, and Karrion Kross says he'll deal with it. We then get a highlight back to before the show started, and Adam Pearce announced that there will be a women's Intercontinental Championship with a tournament starting up next Monday, kind of an answer to the women's United States title on SmackDown. So all kind of thought it was coming once they announced the women's U.S. title, but I think they kind of wanted to give it a little bit of time and the tournament for that kind of percolate a little bit before they officially announced this one. We then get Nia. She talks to her team for War Games and how she's going to go out and get them the advantage against Bianca. So we have an advantage match between Bianca and Nia in our main event, and Bianca is able to win her team the advantage via pinfall when she hits a 450 splash after a distraction from Bayley. So Bayley immediately paying dividends, getting the distraction in there, so Bianca can win them the advantage. And that was the best match. Not much match situations going on here. This was a lot of storyline stuff, a lot of hype going towards Survivor Series. And, the New Day match was pretty much a squash, like I said, just to kind of continue that rift. The tag title match was a solid match as well, but just a lot of storyline progression and stuff like that on this show to kind of lead towards Survivor Series. So not super match heavy or paying attention too much to the matches, but that main event was pretty solid because Bianca's one of those people that it's hard for her to ever have a bad match. And she even pulled something good out of Nia there. So we'll then go to NXT. We open with a recap of Ridge Holland beating Andre Chase last week. And Chase used music hits, but it's actually Ridge coming out to the ring to crush all the people in the NXT arena a little bit more. And he gets straight to the point and just says, "I told you so," and that he will be coming for the NXT championship at Deadline. We then get Ethan Page defeating Axiom via pinfall following a devastating clothesline. This gets him into the Iron Survivor Challenge. And then after the match, Page brags about his win, but Nathan Frazier, but Frazier says Page hasn't won anything yet. Page says he just beat the guy that makes the team work, but Frazier isn't so sure about that. With Axiom kind of being annoyed with that statement, Wes Lee and Javon Evans, who are also in the Iron Survivor Challenge, come out and say that they will win the Iron Survivor Challenge. And then a bunch of the tag teams of NXT come out to brawl with Axiom and Nathan Frazier, who are the tag team champions. We then get Lola Vice and Stephanie Vacour bickering in the back about who will win the Iron Survivor Challenge, but Rincy Claire interrupts, and then Vice isn't too pleased about this and promises Ren a beating later. We then get Nikita Lyons and Ashante the Adonis. They're in the back kind of talking about Adonis talking to her previously. Carmen then comes in and yells at Adonis a little bit more, with Lyons not being too impressed and kind of walking off. So Ashante, though gets approached by two women during this segment, ends up with none at the end. We then get Lola Vice defeating Ren Sinclair via pinfall with the spinning back fist. And then after the match, Lola challenges Jada Parker to an NXT Underground match. We then see the D'Angelo family and Tony D assures Rizzo that his knee is okay to go tonight. And we then cut to Sean Spears and Brooks Jensen, and they are ready for the upcoming North American title match between Spears and Tony D. Fatal Influence then calls Tatum Paxley a freak, but Tatum mentions that something from their past will haunt them later on tonight when they face each other. Tony D then defeats Sean Spears via pinfall with his big spinebuster. Spears, Jensen, and then their driver, whose name is Nico, jumps Tony after the match. So Nico, I think, is going to be a ongoing character because he's been Spears' driver over the last month or so, but he comes out to help with the attack here. We get more tag team brawling in between that and the next segment. We then get Mr. Chase. He leaves the university one last time, but as he's kind of trying to walk out of the door, a voice calls him, but we never really see who it was. And then we get Julia defeating Kalani Jordan via pinfall with the Northern Lights bomb to qualify for the Iron Survivor Challenge. So Big win for Julia and a really solid match. Kalani's still pretty new. You can tell sometimes that she's still trying to figure it out, but putting her in there with a experienced vet like Julia was a good idea, and ended up being a pretty solid match. We then get Ava. She makes a multi-person match between all of the Iron Survivor Challenge qualifier losers for the last spot. And then as for Axiom and Nathan Frazier, they will defend their titles at deadline against the winner of next week's tag team battle royal. Axiom says they might have to wrestle twice, but Frazier points out that Axiom has to qualify first, and then they continue to bicker. Eddie Thorpe then goes to kind of talk to Ava, even grabbing her arm at one point. Ava yells at him for doing so, and then some people are kind of arguing around there and arguing around them and run into the door and knock Ava down to the ground. So she sold it pretty well. It seems like she's pretty hurt and hurt her arm. And then we come back from commercial. Shawn Michaels is kind of checking on her, and then he is absolutely pissed at Eddie Thorpe and tells him to leave the arena. So pretty fired up Shawn Michaels there, and Eddie seems to be kind of turning heel a little bit. I think he could probably use it at this point. The face thing really is not getting over for him, so maybe a whiny heel character could probably do something for him, but we'll see how he kind of goes from there. But he will have another shot to get into the Iron Survivor Challenge next week. We then get Trick Williams. He's out for a promo. Williams says that Ava is being checked on by medics, and then he moves on to Ridge Holland, ending Chase U last week. He says there have been all kinds of people who have given it their all for NXT, even people like Carmelo Hayes. That's why he can't let Ridge Holland become NXT champion, because everything those people have fought for will go up in smoke. Holland is then out, says controversy follows him wherever he goes. And the word controversy brings in Eric Bischoff, of all people. He pops up on the screen, says he wants to get a closer look at NXT and is going to do something to make Trick and Holland want to destroy each other even more. So we'll see what that all has to come down to. I'm guessing it's going to be some kind of contract signing segment, but Bischoff will be in the NXT arena next week. So pretty interesting thing there, but we'll see what that ends up being. We then get the No Quarter Catch crew talking to each other. Charlie informs Ren that she has a last chance opportunity to get into the Iron Survivor Challenge, but she has to defeat three of the best in NXT. And then she says she is nervous based on who they are. We then get our main event where Fallon Henley defeats Tatum Paxley to retain her NXT North American Women's Championship. She does that by hitting the Famouser. And then post-match, they attack Tatum some more, and then Gigi Dolan comes back and makes her return and runs them all off with the help of Tatum. So pretty hot ending. Pretty big return. Gigi's been out for a while with an injury, so good to see her back. But that Ethan Page versus Axiom match to kind of start the show was really, really good. Axiom super talented, and Ethan Page, when he has somebody like that that can kind of do a lot of, he's a good solid wrestler, but he's one that can kind of enhance a guy like Axiom. So definitely a solid match, and ends up being probably one of the better matches a week, just based on the fact that we're kind of coming off pay-per-views and building towards the next ones and all that kind of stuff. So really, really good solid match there on NXT. So check that one out. We then open Dynamite by introducing us to the Continental Classic groups. We get the Blue Group, which will feature Shelton Benjamin, Kyle Fletcher, Daniel Garcia, Kazuchika Okada, Mark Briscoe, and the Beast Mortos. And then the Gold League will be Claudio Castagnoli, Brody King, Will Ospreay, Darby Allin, Juice Robinson, and Ricochet. So pretty loaded field. Maybe not quite as good as last year, because last year's had Bryan Danielson, and I think Moxley was in last year as well. So little weaker field, but it kind of, with some of those guys not around anymore, and it kind of being something to kind of build maybe a new guy up. You were going to end up taking a little bit of a hit there, but still a solid field nonetheless. You still got Ospreay in there. Claudio's a big guy, but we'll see how it ends up going. And it'll still be entertaining, still be really good. But we'll see how the rest of the Continental Classic goes. But we'll start those matches tonight. But before we do that, the Hurt Syndicate come out. MVP compares Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin to Michael Jordan and Walter Payton, but says anyone who turns them down, the future isn't all that bright for them. He said, like Swerve Strickland is one of those people that his future is not going to be bright because he turned down the offer to join them. And then we see a clip of Lashley taking Swerve out at Full Gear. We then open Continental Classic matches with Shelton Benjamin defeating Mark Briscoe via pinfall with the Exploder Suplex. Then get Mercedes and Camille out for an interview. Tony praises Monet's match with Chris Statlander, and then Monet calls it Money. And she also suggests that Camille isn't all that bright, which causes Camille to quit, associating herself with Mercedes. So Mercedes is now all alone as Camille quits being her heavy. We then get Chris Jericho retaining the ROH World title by defeating Tomohiro Ishii via pinfall with the Judas effect, and then he hits the Lion Salt after that. So hits two big moves in a row and gets the win. We then get Swerve getting interviewed and kind of talks about how hard-hitting and tough his match with Bobby Lashley was the previous night. And then Max Caster out of nowhere interrupts and kind of makes fun of him losing again. And then Swerve absolutely kicks his ass. We then get Hangman Page out. He talks about everything he did at Full Gear. He isn't happy with Christian screwing up his chance to cash in his world title shot because Page would win the world title tonight and then go home and eat some stuffing. Jay White then comes out and brings up the fact that he beat Page once again for the second time in a row. So he wants a world title shot. And then the Death Riders come out and take both of them out, with Jon Moxley ending the segment, choking Jay White out. We then get Claudio in a Continental Classic match, defeating Ricochet via pinfall after hitting a hard lariat. We then get Don Callis and Kyle Fletcher out. They brag about Fletcher beating Will Ospreay, and that was proof that Fletcher is better, and the Continental Classic will be another way to prove that he is the future, and he is even the present now, and better than Will Ospreay. We then get Adam Cole and the Undisputed Kingdom. They come out calling out MJF. Instead, they get Kyle O'Reilly, who offers to fight MJF himself. Cole wants to do it, but MJF pops on the screen and to say he's too focused on next week's Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal, which is what he has to do every year to defend his Dynamite Diamond ring. O'Reilly and Cole then says they will enter the Battle Royal as well for a chance to get a shot at beating the shit out of MJF. We then are informed that we are getting a qualifying tournament for an AEW spot in the Wrestle Dynasty International Women's Cup, with two semifinals starting tonight. And the brackets are Jamie Hayter versus Queen Aminata and Serena D versus Willow Nightingale. And then we get one of those semifinals where Jamie Hayter defeats Queen Aminata via pinfall with the Haterade. So Jamie Hayter will face either Serena Deeb or Willow in the final, and that person will get a spot in the Wrestle Dynasty International Women's Cup. I don't know if it's going to end up being a tournament or just a match, but we'll see what happens with that as we get kind of closer to Wrestle Dynasty, as I'm sure we'll get more information on that. We then get a sit-down interview with Mina Shirakawa, who said she knew Mariah May could turn on her. She said she was ready for what was coming, and she showed who the real Mina Shirakawa is. And then Mariah May hits her in the back of the head with a bottle, and May says she wants the real Mina. So we'll see once they finally face off what that means. But Mariah and Mina getting a little more personal after being the best of friends. So Mariah seems to have had a lot of friends at one point, and she constantly turns on them because she wants to be the best, and wants nobody even near her at the top. And then we get our main event where Brody King defeats Darby Allin via pinfall with the Gonzo Bomb. And then after the match, Claudio comes out with a chair, but Brody King is able to cut him off. And then Claudio and Brody each kind of stare at each other to end the show, setting up obviously their Continental Classic match. I believe next week. I think that's the next week's Continental Classic match. But Ricochet and Claudio was the best match of the show. Really, really solid match between those two. All the Continental Classic matches were actually really solid, but none of them were like super blow away. But that one was Ricochet and Claudio was definitely the best. So that will get best match of the show. TNA ran with their special event coming up, and with it, TNA being on Thanksgiving, being on Thursday and all, they ran like a episode where they did like never before seen matches. I didn't feel like I really needed to cover it based on the fact that they had a special event coming up Friday. But I mean, if you want to check that out, that had some solid matches on it, I believe. So definitely something that could be worth checking out, but I just didn't figure I should cover it here because it was kind of a best of kind of scenario and wasn't really a real episode. So I will move straight from there to SmackDown, and then we'll end it with Turning Point. We get Team Rhea Ripley coming out to kind of start the show. We officially have Bayley replacing Jade, of course. They come out for a chat. Ripley talks about how the team isn't a bunch of friends, but they all have someone they want to get their hands on in War Games. The rest of the team, being Naomi, Bayley, Io Sky, and Bianca Belair, agree, but Team Liv Morgan comes out. Nia brings up all the other team's past issues, with Morgan accusing Bayley of attacking Jade, being the one that took her out. Ripley then cuts her off and says Morgan is going to have to face her at some point during War Games. And then they continue to throw threats back and forth. And then they end up brawling in the aisle and on the stage. And some actually are brawling in the ring as well. And then eventually the referees have to come out and split everybody up. We then get Shinsuke Nakamura defeating Andrade via pinfall following the Kinshasa. LA Knight then tries to come in and attack Shinsuke, but he ends up getting some mist in the eye for his troubles. We then get Nick Aldis. He comes to Solo's Bloodlines locker room and says that all Bloodline members, OG and Solo's version, are banned from the War Games Advantage match between Jacob Fatu and Jey Uso in the main event tonight. We then get Tommaso Ciampa. He rants at Johnny Gargano about how things have changed and now he wants to get the tag titles back. Gargano has one more week to figure it out, or it's Ciampa's way, whatever that's going to mean. But Gargano has to make a decision, or Tommaso is going to make it for him. We then get Kevin Owens explaining his history with the Bloodline, all the stuff that they've done to him. He shows a bunch of videos, him getting run over by the golf cart in the match at the Royal Rumble a few years ago. And just, Roman and the Bloodline constantly trying to take him out and destroy him. But he shows all this, and he says his friend Cody Rhodes, or who he thought it was his friend, and Cody Rhodes decided to team with Roman Reigns despite the fact that he had so much done to him by Roman Reigns and the Bloodline over the past 3 or 4 years. But now it's time for KO to get revenge. And with his title match at Saturday Night's Main Event, he will plan to do so by taking the title from Cody Rhodes. We then get Cody Rhodes. He defeats Carmelo Hayes via pinfall with the Crossroads. We then get Paul Heyman. He held a sit-down with Roman Reigns and CM Punk. Of course, Punk shows up late, which gets on Reigns' nerves. He eventually shows up, and he's here for Heyman rather than Reigns. Reigns says that doesn't work for him, who doesn't like anything about Punk. Heyman says it's over without Punk, and if Punk doesn't help, he'll be next for the Bloodline. United at best, they survive. Punk still doesn't care about Reigns, but he wants to avenge Heyman. If Reigns wants to revisit this after Survivor Series 1-on-1, Punk is all ears. For now, though, their wise man owes Punk a favor. Punk then leaves, and Reigns asks Heyman about the favor, and Heyman says he will tell him if they get through War Games. So Punk obviously is trying to cash in on some kind of favor, so we'll see what that is. But Heyman wanted to keep it in his back pocket until after the match was over at Survivor Series. We then get Michin defeating Piper Niven and Lash Legend via when Lash actually hits the Lash extension, has Piper covered, and Meechin hits a senton and takes her out and steals the pin on Piper. So she advances in the U.S. women's title tournament. So we'll see who our other semifinal opponent is in next week's qualifying match. We then get Byron Saxon. He's with LA Knight. Knight says he's locked in and he's going to get revenge on Nakamura at Survivor Series, whether Mist is involved or not. We then get Sami Zayn and Jimmy Uso hyping up Jay before the Advantage match, but Aldis reminds the OG bloodline that no one is allowed at ringside from either side. And then we get our main event where Jacob Fatu wins Solo's bloodline the Advantage, defeating Jey Uso via pinfall after a top rope springboard moonsault to gain, like I said, Solo's bloodline the Advantage at War Games. The best match on that was definitely Carmelo Hayes versus Cody Rhodes. Carmelo pretty regularly has the best match on SmackDown every week. And that may be my NXT bias, I guess, but he constantly performs really, really well, and Cody was a good opponent to throw in there with him. So definitely a solid match. And then the triple threat women's match was also very, very good, I thought, for my opinion. Just based on the competitors, I wouldn't have thought it would be anything great, but I actually ended up really enjoying it. So may have snuck into my top 5. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we'll go from there to Turning Point to kind of finish out the week. This happened on Friday. It and SmackDown will probably airing around the same time. So, but I'll cover it last here. Mike Santana opens the show defeating Frankie Kazarian via pinfall with the spin the block clothesline. We then get Joe Hendry getting the win in the Turkey Bowl. He hits the standing ovation on Brian Myers. So this match also included Rhino, John Skyler, Hammerstone, and then Eric Young. So I didn't really want to say Joe Hendry defeated all those guys, because really the only thing that happens is the loser, who ends up being Brian Myers, getting pinned, has to end up putting a turkey suit on. So Joe Hendry really, all you're really trying to do is to not lose this match. So because you end up having to wear a turkey suit after the match if you do. So Hendry pins Brian Myers, so they put the turkey suit on him after the match. So kind of played for comedy, but I think it was just really a way to get Hendry on the show, as he's one of their biggest stars, and get him a big win to kind of probably build him back up to a possible world title match in the future. We then get Moose. He defends his X Division title successfully, defeating Laredo Kid when he hits a pair of spears after he got his knees up on the 450 splash. We then get Steve Maclin defeating Josh Alexander via pinfall after he hits a top rope KIA DDT onto a pile of bullet shell casings, which was really sick. And then we get the Hardys and Ace Austin defeating Kushida, Zachary Wentz, and Matt Riddle. He ended up being a mystery partner because for some reason Trey Miguel was out. So they brought in Matt Riddle. But Jeff wins the match for his team when he hits the Swanton on Kushida. We then get Masha Slamovich winning the 2 out of 3 falls match, defending her Knockouts Women's Champion Knockouts World Title, defeating Jordan Grace. She wins the 3rd fall via pinfall with a package pile driver. And then we get our main event where Nick Nemeth defeats Eddie Edwards via pinfall with the Danger Zone after JBL had dealt with Brian Myers, who had come out to try to interfere, hitting him with the clothesline from hell. But Nick Nemeth ends up retaining his world title there. I wouldn't have expected Eddie Edwards to be much of a threat coming in, but it actually ended up being a pretty solid match. But best match on the show was the women's 2 out of 3 falls match. Jordan Grace and Masha just have a ton of chemistry with each other, and they're both really, really good. So definitely a really solid match there. And another solid TNA show. They're never going to put on a bad show per se. Everything may not have hit out of the park, but I'd even say Moose and Laredo was really good, given, maybe the squash potential, looking at that on the outside, looking in, potential that it probably would have. And then Macklin and Alexander, they're 2 guys that have a ton of chemistry with each other as well. So just a really solid show, top to bottom. And you get the surprise of Matt Riddle coming in as well. He didn't win, but I think it was still a solid surprise there to kind of have him in that match. But we'll go through some TV match rankings real quick. Even Page versus Axiom grabs the number 1 spot for me this week. Ricochet and Claudio would be number 2. Cody versus Carmelo would be number 3 for me. Kalani versus Julia would get another 4th spot for me. And then the Piper Niven, Lash Legend, and Michin triple threat match would grab the 5th spot for me. So 2 SmackDown matches this week, which is pretty rare. But like I said, coming off Full Gear, and a lot of the stuff being kind of Continental Classic matches, and having to fit so many in the same show. Some are going to kind of fall on the wayside, but I really enjoyed that triple threat. I really enjoyed Cody and Carmelo, and I thought NXT's had one of its best shows this week overall. So definitely a solid 5 there. Definitely check all those out. But as far as pay-per-view, I'm probably going to overrate a couple of TNA matches here. This probably should all be Full Gear matches, but like I said, Full Gear wasn't their best output for sure. But number 1 would be Ospreay versus Fletcher. Ospreay's probably going to be number 1 if he's on any pay-per-view match that falls in with something else, like a TNA show or another WWE show. But Ospreay's one of the best in the world. He constantly performs at a high level every time he goes out there. So him and Fletcher blew the roof off the building at that pay-per-view. So really, really good stuff there. I would put Mercedes and Statlander at number 2. Number 3 for me would be Jordan Grace versus Masha Slamovich. And then Steve Macklin and Josh Alexander would be number 4. And then number 5, maybe controversial, especially with the boss here at the backbone, Sean Kidd. I would put Hangman Page and Jay White. I thought it was a really solid match, worked around a couple of injuries really, really well. So I thought it deserved the 5th spot for the pay-per-view match rankings this week. But thank you for joining me as always, and we will see you next week. Like I said, we'll cover the TV and then Survivor Series as well. Bye-bye.